really honored to be here speaking tonight. Thank you, Bob and Andrew, for inviting me. I have to confess that until I was invited to speak here, I had never heard of the term third places. But now in just 2 months, I've become obsessed with it. And I see third places everywhere through various filters of history, geography, economics, culture, and even within my own family, looking back. I see horses tied near my paternal grandfather's ice cream store in upstate New York. Customers seated on milk crates outside my maternal grandfather's grocery store in downtown Brooklyn. And the gas station where my brother Bobby worked and his greaser friends would congregate for hours, smoking Marlboro Reds and working on their Chevys. I picture my grandma in her small Sicilian village, washing clothes at the river or baking bread at the community oven. Her third places were about purpose and daily survival, but they also afforded socializing with other young women her age. Back to the future, I will always love my indie coffee spots. Joe Johnston's coffee plantation was my personal first third place here in the Valley. But today, our farmers markets are my favorite of the third places. And I'm curious to explore new third places, including musical ones like karaoke, open mic night, or a jazz jam, where I could bring my guitar instead of my laptop. Because that's what third places are about, connection, and not on the internet. Perhaps because I was preparing for a trip there, all the third place thinking really reinforced my nostalgia for the time and place I grew up in, on the East Coast. I didn't know it at the time, but I now see the world of my youth was overflowing with third places. Civic third places like the American Legion, the Knights of Columbus, and the Veterans of Foreign Wars. Social third places like movie theaters, bars, and dance clubs. Sporting third places like the ballpark, the stables at the racetrack, and the Rod and Gun Club. Seasonal third places such as the roller and ice skating rinks, Jones Beach, or our public pools. Retail third places including the hardware store, the pharmacy, the feed store, the bait shop. Academic third places like the public library, the community college quad, and the university rathskellers. And forbidden third places like off-track betting and strip clubs. It seems the most common third places then and now were the ones offering sustenance with a side of socializing. Bakeries, delicatessens, diners, luncheonettes, pizzerias, ice cream, and sub shops. And while my suburban Long Island hometown was dominated by independent businesses, even chains had a third place niche. Summer afternoons would find a group of kids congregating outside the 7-Eleven over Slurpees and comic books. A tangle of bikes outside the Carvel was a frequent sight on a summer evening. And there were unofficial third places, outdoor areas like the creek bank behind the high school. Can you guess what we did there? And small park-like common areas such as the one Billy Joel reminisced about when he sang, "Do you remember those days hanging out at the Village Green?" The majority of these third places became that way by default rather than design. It was the 1970s and 80s when we connected with fellow humans in 3 primary ways: face-to-face, over a rotary dial telephone, or with a postage stamp. These third places are vividly alive in my memory. Not the structures, the layout, or the decor, but the people. The butchers, Pat and Whitey, in their long white jackets and paper hats, who handed me slices of mortadella and provolone while they filled my grandpa's order. Tony the pizza man, who knew every customer by their pie order and their phone number, years before computer was a household word. Some are faces without names, like bank tellers who stamped my savings account passbook and offered me a lollipop. Librarians who looked the same when I was 25 as they did when I was 5. Or in the small upstate town of Olean, New York, the diner waitress who remembered my dad's favorite pie, even though he only passed through the town a few times a year. The length of time spent interacting with the proprietor, employees, or other patrons may have varied, but almost every transaction seemed to include some degree of social interaction and at least a minimum of lingering. In the late 1980s, I was just killing time here in the Valley while waiting to be called to the Nassau County Police Academy. I had a temp job at a large foreign corporation where thousands of employees spent days isolated in cubicles and offices. I hated it. It was boring but bearable as a stepping stone to my goal. And by the time I was finally called up, Arizona had seduced me with her climate, lifestyle, and affordability. So I set aside the law and order dream to follow my passion for writing. And a restaurant job seemed ideal both for financing the dream of the great American novel and working in the more social environment I desperately craved. While I loved working at a family-owned Italian restaurant in New York during my college years, I had never really considered a career in hospitality. But, and maybe if I had been hired by a TGIF or a Bennigan's, I would have stayed on my path. Instead, I had the very good fortune to be hired by Let Us Entertain You at the original Ed DeBevick's location here in Phoenix. And it changed my life. The Phoenix Eds could have been the poster child for a restaurant as a third place, for many reasons. Nostalgia for a famously beloved era, complete with miniature jukeboxes and malted milkshakes served in tins, as some of you may have experienced if you ever went there. Food that was familiar and affordable, with something for all tastes and every age. Costumed servers who behaved with a sassy irreverence. A riot of colorful visuals to entertain and spark conversation. Comfortable, upholstered booths throughout. A lower-level counter and an upper-level bar that attracted solo diners. And with all the seating, fairly screaming, relax and stay a while, regulars were a given. There was Bert, the attorney, who brought all us girls flowers and candy on holidays. Remember him, Tanya? Bernie, the lobster broker, and a shy boy named Chris, both of them with mad crushes on two of our veteran waitresses. Eric, the biker, who toted his vintage Royal typewriter in a knapsack and his Lucky Strikes rolled up in his t-shirt sleeve. Part of the Ed DeBevick's charm was not knowing which characters you'd encounter on any given day, both the servers and the customers. And we had as much fun as the customers did, maybe more. Ed's was diner theater, and you could simply enjoy it or play along and make yourself part of the show. After 5 years at Ed's, being the opening chef of Cowboy Chow was quite an adjustment. I was used to being on the move as a server or managing the dining room from an open kitchen, but always working the room, being part of the dynamic, being the hostess of the party, facilitating everyone's good time, spreading the love and sparking connections. Now I was trapped in a small space, focused on tasks and timing, observing the interaction, but not really part of it. I relished the times when I could get out of the kitchen to the dining room to answer questions, visit with guests, or sing. Yes, sing. There will be no singing tonight, at least not while the tape's rolling. All of Chow's spin-offs were also built with open kitchens and bars meant for dining, intended to provoke relaxation, but also entertainment and interaction. Today, the Valley's dining scene is blessed with countless spots incorporating these connector features, now so common in modern third places. Think of the community tables such as those at Elements, Beckett's Table, Pane Bianco, the new North Arcadia, and the wonderful garden at Le Grand Orange. But our third places are also rich with larger-than-life personalities. Hearing their names evokes memories of a dish, a cocktail, a room, an event. Close your eyes and think of these people. Eddie, Chrissa, Bo Mack, Travis, Jason, Richie Moe, and George Jett, Raz and Bobby Joe, Pavle and Charlene, Jan and Helen, Molly's, Tarbells, Vincent's. Some are names, some are places. Even if you haven't been there, you've probably heard of them because people talk about them. They are popular because they're real and authentic, and people relate to that. And different people love them for different reasons, on different occasions, and depending on who they're coming together with. My hands are frozen, I'm sorry. We even have our own version of the soup Nazi. Sometimes even service with a snarl can't stop a third place from succeeding. Bonus points if you know where that is. Service. I love interviewing and hiring for it. One of my favorite questions is to ask applicants how they treat their guests. And most offer a version of the golden rule. Smart answer, right? Typically, I would applaud that response because I love that concept, that kindergarten classic. I try to live that way. But in an arena that serves basic human needs, something so personal as the food and drink that nourishes our body, it's not always the right way. It was Deirdre Payne from Mali's who first got me thinking about that many years ago. One man's third place is another woman's nightmare. It depends on what speaks to you: location, space, temperature, dress code, or the lack of it, body language, colors, sounds, smells. For some of us, absolutely everything that affects the guest's experience is important, and no detail is too small. Some people want to be where everybody knows your name, recognized, fawned, and fussed over. Others want anonymity and minimal attention. Some want reserved efficiency, while others want to linger and chat. For me, it is a given to perceive how each guest would like to be treated and adjust service accordingly. All things being equal, even if I were not on the hyper-local train, I would avoid chains simply because of the formulaic, impersonal service. I'm Diane, not Lilith. And like Diane, I love language. The word hospitality stems from the Latin hospes, which stems from hostis, which originally meant to have power. So the meaning of host can literally be read as Lord of Strangers. Now that might sound arrogant, but it's not. It's more like a holy obligation. Explore the etymology of the word hospitality in any language, and you will find it's always about giving and sharing, providing basic needs like food, drink, shelter, and comfort. But what does it really mean to be hospitable in a restaurant as a third place? At minimum, we're obliged to create a welcoming atmosphere, to be friendly, warm, and gracious. At best, we should be authentic, sincerely happy to serve you, and genuinely concerned for your comfort. Ready even to go above and beyond at times. We're there to facilitate you making new memories and to evoke happy ones from your past. And yes, this is why the pastry chefs ply you with desserts that remind you of your childhood. If we are successful, we provoke a desire to return and for you to tell others about the experience. And what motivates that desire? I love Maya Angelou's quote, "People may forget what you did, they may forget what you said, but they will always remember how you made them feel." Perhaps the best third places are the ones that stir us emotionally. They invoke a feeling of connection, of belonging, of being cared for. And while the added value costs nothing, it feeds our soul, and that is priceless. I was in Santa Fe recently for the first time. I waited 22 years to go there. It had a lot to live up to. And I had a third place experience that was highly memorable, in part because it was so unexpected. After a brunch of mediocre food, apathetic service, and disgraceful coffee, I was making my way to the Georgia O'Keeffe Museum when a sign caught my eye. Holy Spirit Espresso, best coffee in Santa Fe. I smiled and changed direction just to take a picture of the sign. I really didn't have time for coffee. But the tiny space was so intriguing, I stuck my head in, and I met Bill, the proprietor and barista. My 10-minute interaction with Bill created such a powerful impression of my first trip to Santa Fe. I can't wait to go back. He offered assistance even before I bought anything. He was sincerely grateful when I did, and he lit up like a Christmas tree when I told him, "Just surprise me and make me your favorite." He showed passion for his craft, a desire to please, and humility. It couldn't have been more perfect. He insisted on walking me out to the street to point the way to the museum, and I smiled all the way there at the memory of our very brief exchange. And yes, the coffee was pretty great too. Thank you.